God is good, and with each day that passes brings us a day closer to the launch of Pantheon Rise of the Fallen. This is the Nathan Napalm channel, and if you are new here, please consider subscribing, especially if you're interested in MMO news and Pantheon Rise of the Fallen. So today, guys, we're going to be talking about a new interview with Nethel of the Crafting Extraordinaire, as well as Joppa. Chris Perkins did a new interview with Disparate Worlds. And by the way, guys, I definitely want to encourage that you go check out the full interview with Nethel and Joppa. There is a link in the description down below, straight to Disparate Worlds YouTube page. Give them a like, give them some comments, and of course, subscribe to them as well for this excellent work they're doing in covering Pantheon as well as Ashes of Creation. And during this interview, there was a lot of talk about crafting and things like that. A lot of that we've already covered. Of course, there was a lot of bits and details here we can make future videos about, but the main thing that struck me is it came up while talking about crafting armor and weapons and all that kind of thing about best in slot, right? And we've talked about that a little bit on the channel before, and you can check out my full Pantheon playlist, of course, where we go into high detail of this several times on the channel. But to hear Joppa's words exactly of how they're going to be battling best in slot, and when I say battle, the interesting thing about the way that Pantheon is approaching it is they know there's going to be one, right? There's going to be best in slot. There's going to be that meta kind of gear that you're supposed to have. But to battle that and make it not just so simple and make it just not so one layered, they have a plan. And we've talked about this plan. This has been in the works the entire production of Pantheon Rise of the Fallen as far as I am concerned. But let's hear what Joppa has to say, and then we'll break it down and discuss it further. Now, before we get to what Joppa said, I do want to give a very big shout out to the members of Napalm. Thank you all so very much for keeping this channel alive and sponsoring this channel. If you are interested in becoming a member, please click the join button down below for more information and a list of perks. And a very special shout out to Reiko for being our highest tier member. Now, on to what Joppa had to say. Let's go, and I'll see you on the other side.
A player's going to get in there, going to map this thing out. Okay, here, and it's going to become common quote-unquote conventional knowledge, right? The best thing that you can do is have an X sword with this damage, blah, 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 and it gets out there.
To me, diversity is achieved through meaningful choices. So if we're building things in such a way where there's only one best option, then we've already failed at achieving diversity.
Right.
Yeah, well, I mean, best in slot exists only in as much as there's a way to kind of uniformly position yourself as optimally effective against any situation in any context. That's typically where you end up with a best in slot syndrome. So if I'm a wizard and the only like stats that matter in every situation to me are intelligence and stamina, let's say, and NPCs are primarily, you know, only there to soak up damage from me. Like I don't have anything else to really do as a wizard, and NPCs don't have anything else they're really doing except soaking damage. Then you move further and further into like a best in slot syndrome.
You get herded into that almost. Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's an even better word. You are literally designed into that, and however many different handholds and grips and levers and knobs you build into the design of these things is the degree to which you can get away from best in slot or just further into it. So for Pantheon, there's several layers of complexity that I'm not going to say there's not going to be some best in slot items, but it's going to be much more. It's going to be as much as we can decentralized and kind of moved more into, it depends on what you're wanting to do in the situation. So is there a best in slot, you know, staff that a wizard will have? Probably not, in the sense that it's not going to be best in slot for every situation that you're dealing with. Now, here are some of the specific layers that contribute to that. Number one, you have a base attribute system that's extremely potent. Every point of attribute in Pantheon is comparatively to, you know, typically in other MMOs, we swing much more to weighting our attributes much heavier, as opposed to letting level do the majority of the work, and then attributes are kind of there to, you know, 25% or so. Our attributes are much more potent than that. In addition to that, our attributes are manifold, and so there are 2, 3 different things that each attribute, constitution is doing, agility is doing, intelligence is doing. We've also made the attributes mutually desirable. So, for example, a wizard isn't going to just want intelligence. Intelligence is providing spell power and mana primarily, but wisdom is governing spell critical hit. And so you're kind of seeing these multiple attributes that are mutually desirable. But then even further than that, you have your ability arsenal, and your abilities actually are set up to benefit uniquely from specific stats. So a wizard, for example, their fire line could actually, their fire spells could be amplified by strength, because there's something to just the force with which you're pushing these things out, that you're actually seeing wizards that are speccing a little more into strength on purpose, not because they need it for melee damage, but because it's actually benefiting their fire
incredible
spells.
That's really neat.
Especially, but like I said, it's even that, it's not a static thing where I choose kind of my focus and that's my bell curve, but it's more like, okay, what NPCs am I fighting? What specific dispositions do they have, let's say? So all of a sudden I find myself in a situation where I'm fighting a predator NPC, or I'm fighting a mastermind disposition NPC, and all of a sudden I have to totally rethink my loadout and what I'm bringing into that battle, because this NPC is not going to respond or be affected in the same way. And so therefore, what stats do I need to be most effective for this specific? When you factor in the environmental effects, the climate, the atmospheres, and the dispositions, and kind of all these different layers that I've just described, it's not that you're doing away with the idea that there's a combination of stats on a particular item that are just the best in a sense, but it's the best for what, and the best win, and that's kind of more where we're trying to lean towards.
So this is where everything just kind of comes into play here, right? So the stats are super important, right? And your abilities are, keep in mind, this is a limited action set, so you can't just have every ability out and be hitting, control shift, mouse button 12 all the time, right? So you got to pick what comes with you, right? And so not only is every ability tied very heavily to the stats, therefore, depending on your layout is going to change what is best in slot for you. I mean, you could say, well, yeah, but people come up with what's best in slot for the ability. Well, then you have to go into, well, guess what? It depends on what you're doing, right? It depends on what you're fighting. It depends on what area you're in, what dungeon you're in. What's the acclimation? What's the disposition of the mobs that you're fighting, which can change on the fly, by the way. As they can spawn with a random new disposition. And of course, then you start thinking, well, what about endgame? Well, the endgame is set up the same way, right? Where the raid fights are going to be different acclimations to even get to it, and plus, not to mention the high aspect of acclimation of that raid boss you may need to even survive certain hits and certain attacks that it might do. So basically it comes down to, there are best in slots. There are just a lot of them. It's more complicated than this is best in slot for Paladin. No. Paladin for doing what, right? What abilities? What fights? What content is that best in slot for? So yeah, we're never going to get away from best in slot. However, Visionary Realms has done a really good job of making it so complicated, as I've said before on the channel, that it's not going to be simple, right? It's going to be complicated. So this creates more activity, more things to do, more going out into the world and trying to find different sets for different things. And that's not to say there's not different ways of approaching that fight either. So I don't have best in slot for that raid fight, I guess I can't do it. Well, come on, don't be ridiculous. There's going to be potions. There's going to be different ways to acclimate. There's going to be all kinds of options there. So it's not to say, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to go out and grind for months on end just to do this one particular piece of content. Come on, don't be ridiculous. So that's not what they're saying at all. There's multiple avenues. There's that choice on how you get there. But you collecting best in slot for every single type of situation you could be in, I'm going to go ahead and tell you it's nigh near impossible, even if you know life, right? And pee in a cup and poop in a sock. I just don't think many people are going to get there. Some may, right? There may be a few legendary adventurers out there who pull it off, but not many. So I think this this is a great approach to MMOs and fighting that meta, that best in slot and all that kind of thing, because you can't have a meta when it depends on the situation. You can have a meta for that situation, but once again, that's so complicated, it's really something different entirely. It's not even really the same thing anymore. So I thought this was super interesting out of this interview, and I wanted to share it with you guys. Let me know in the comments down below what you think. What's your opinion on this kind of thing? And do you agree with me that this really it's a game changer, right? I really believe it is. Let me know if you agree with that down below. Tell me some of your experiences with meta and with best in slot and all that kind of thing. But mainly, let's try to talk about, is this the right solution? Because I believe it is. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. And of course, guys, help me feed this hungry YouTube algorithm by smashing that like button down below. And of course, subscribing, especially if you love MMO content. That's what we cover right here on the Nathan Napalm channel, as well as CRPGs, JRPGs, RPGs, all that kind of thing as well. But guys, I hope you enjoyed the video today. And one big major shout out to the members of Napalm. Thank you all so very much for your support. I could not do this without you. I really appreciate you guys. Every time I get more support, it just helps me grow this channel more and get more equipment needed, etc. I'm in need of some equipment right now, to be honest. But thank you guys so very much. Appreciate you. And if you're interested in helping support this channel, please click the join button down below for more information, a list of perks, and a special shout out to Reiko for being our highest tier member. Thank you very much, Reiko. And until next time, guys, God bless and happy gaming.